You're listening to the Fashion Ambition Podcast, and I'm your host, Natalie Robin. The Fashion Ambition Podcast is all about bringing you the tools and strategies to start and scale your business or career in fashion through conversations with industry experts who have been there and done that. Whether you're a startup founder, a new fashion graduate, or a soon-to-be graduate like me, or you just know that a career in fashion is your calling, we have an episode to help you launch. Make sure to keep up with new episodes by following the podcast at The Fashion Ambition on Instagram, where I update you on new episodes every week. You can also find my blog on Instagram at Nomad and Mode and online at nomadandmode.net, where I write all about fashion and travel. You can find all of the links to connect with me in the show notes. So with that, let's get into the episode. Hi, this is Natalie, and welcome back to the Fashion Ambition Podcast. I'm really looking forward to sharing this episode because I'll be talking with Kendal Netmaker, who is a successful entrepreneur, author, and speaker originally from Sweetgrass First Nation in Saskatchewan. Kendal got his start in entrepreneurship as the founder of Neechie Gear, an apparel company driven to empower youth through sports. He's also the founder of Netmaker Leadership Academy, which provides business coaching to entrepreneurs, and is the co-founder of IndigiFund, a nonprofit that helps support Indigenous youth in sports, education, and culture. So today we'll be talking about mindset tips for entrepreneurs, where new entrepreneurs can start if they don't have a lot of resources, and developing community around your brand. So Kendal, welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Natalie.
So I really wanted to start with a point that actually stood out to me while I was going through your book. And that was when you described going in 100% on your business. And I think that was, if I'm remembering correctly, back in 2011. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to start there because I think it's such a pivotal point for so many business owners to kind of, take that leap, because it's a big risk. And especially if you're in a position where you're not completely stable financially. So I was wondering if you could describe kind of what it was that allowed you to take that leap of faith and where your mindset was at that point in time.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I'm currently coaching a ton of entrepreneurs right now that are going through that. And the first thing I tell them is, in order for this to work 100% of where you expect it to be and more, you have to give it 100% of your time. And it's 100% focus you have to put into it. And a lot of people have a hard time making that adjustment, primarily because, Natalie, they get too comfortable in their life. They get too comfortable with living with, maybe they're working full time and they have a really good job, and maybe you have children, and so your comfort is to trying to attain a stable life, a stable income for their children. So back when I was in that phase, I had just finished university. I was already used to living off of barely anything. And myself, my wife, Rachel, were in a one-bedroom apartment off of McCurcher. And my son was already here too. So he was a toddler at that time, and he wasn't 1 year old. And it's just a tough time, it was just a tough time financially. And I never had no stability in income. I never had there was opportunities that did come, but I passed on them because I had something, and I just believed in it, where I felt like eventually it would take my time, my full time. And I passed on potentially becoming a teacher, which is, a pretty stable income.
Right.
I remember RBC had an opportunity for me, and I can't remember how that came up. Might have been like Facebook or LinkedIn or something. But even SAS Sport, I had opportunities where I could have been working for other places, and I had to pass on them because I knew realistically that most of these places would not support a side hustle on the side. And that's what I wanted to do, is I wanted to align something with a side hustle, but it never got there. And eventually it allowed me to just, the tipping point was lining up for social assistance in Saskatoon.
Okay.
And that was the the trigger moment, I guess we'll say, for me. And a lot of people, they have these low points in their life, or they have really uncomfortable situations that really push them to change something in their life. And for me, it was that moment, because it triggered my upbringing with my mom, and how she struggled to raise us with living on welfare. And here I'm fast forwarding how many years later, and I'm with my own family in a welfare line, and I'm thinking, holy crap, I didn't go to school for this to happen. I just, a lot of things came back to me. And I remember leaving with Rachel. We went back to our apartment, told her, that's not going to be us. So I'll try to figure things out. I basically had no choice but to succeed. That's what it came down to, Natalie. And so I had no plan B. I had to just go for it. And 2012 was next month. I was about December roughly. And step by step, things started to pop up. We took it from the apartment, whatever we made in the sales in the apartment, we invested into a store. An office downtown. I call the 220. That's when they were just first opening their office space. So we had one of their first offices on the main floor, and that was about 100 square feet. You could see my studio, my office here is like smaller than this. So, it was pretty small for what we were trying to do, but we were selling. People were coming off the street buying from us. We were letting people know on social media. A lot of cool things were happening. And then that transpired into more events. Eventually, we won a competition at the mall, at the Center Mall on A Street. And then we got a kiosk there. And, the rest of the story, how things just compounded over time. But Natalie, it comes down to, if I wasn't full-time, none of that would have happened.
Right. Right. So one of my questions was actually, if you ever felt like it wouldn't succeed. So it wasn't so much like, would you say it wasn't so much that, but it was more so you were thinking, okay, I have no other choice. It has to work.
Yeah, it was a combination of both. It was, I had no choice for it to succeed. That was my opportunity. It was a big gravitational pull towards it. And I wouldn't have felt good if I wasn't trying it, because I would have been like, man, I had all that opportunity. Like the what if came, the what if, and a lot of people live and they settle with what ifs. And I don't know, there's so many things that were laid right before those opportunities came. And I don't know, a lot of things just triggered the moments, triggered the sequences. And I felt like I was just meant to do it. And, I don't know, there's lots behind that, Natalie. Like, mostly, I would say family systems and past family, my ancestors, my kukum, I was a big part of that. And my uncles who eventually passed on as well with their lodge keepers, just, the beliefs between life, ceremony, and how to live a good life. They all came throughout everything, and they still do through every decision they make. And I think what a lot of people don't see behind the business stuff that I do and how I help people is the worldview where I come from, and that worldview is comes from Indigenous culture, Indigenous way of living, and that came from being around ceremony and apprenticing and learning from elders, and so that's where that came from, and the decisions compounded from that foundation.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of your background as well as the experiences that you went through that really kind of influenced you to make that decision. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you read the book, Natalie, I don't have a business degree, right? And a lot of people assume they need some kind of business training to start a business. And so my first thing is, yes, it's good if you have an opportunity to take advanced education. Yes, do that if you can. But if you don't have that opportunity, it's not the end of the world. You can still learn everything you can online. You can still find people who have done things like that. That's why I wrote the book, is because I needed to give people something, because I get a lot of questions all the time online, and people wanting advice, and I point them to the book, and say, it's very inexpensive. You can get pretty much all that information in there, that how we started and whatnot, and the methodologies and the story and whatnot. So So yeah, I hope that makes sense there, Natalie.
Yeah, no, definitely does. And actually that kind of follows into my next question, because I was going to ask you, what would be some advice that you would give somebody who, who is starting with nothing? Maybe they don't have any money to work with, or they don't have any of those built-in connections. What would be some tips that you would give someone who's really wanting to start, but they just don't know what to do?
Yeah. I would say that if you want it bad enough, you'll find a way. And what I mean by that, I don't mean that in a generic, disrespectful term. I mean, there's a drive that everyone has and most people don't activate it. And it's a drive of, how can I say it? It's like you kind of don't want to be like the rest of society in terms of like, you want to make things happen. You want to live a good life. You want to have things that you didn't grow up with. You want to experience things. And if you want to get all that, you can't do it in your current circumstance. You have to change that. And now that you understand that you have to become a different person, you have to grow into a different person, you have to start executing like that person. And that means you're going to have to get on the phone. You're going to have to get on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on TikTok now. There's things like that where you have to start building your network. You have to start talking to people. You have to start offering services for free. I did a lot of that, when Facebook was around and there was Instagram was just coming out. Like that was like my two main things at the time was I was on there a lot and I was just talking to people, trying to sell. I was in my little corner of my apartment. That was my little office in my living room. And that's where it all started was there. And Rachel used to see me, there till 2 a.m. pretty often, right? And just working, and then go back to bed and wake up again. And just it's nonstop, right? And so that's what people don't do. As we were raising our son, right? And right. Now we have 2 children, Rachel's a teacher, still trying to make that a priority and being a good parent for them. They're just outside the door here. Hopefully they don't come walking in, but they're, that's a big part of, again, foundation and trying to be a good person, trying to be a good parent, being a father. That's something I had to learn how to do. And a lot of people, they grew up into situations where it's not their fault that things happen the way they are. But that doesn't mean you can't make it better for your children. That doesn't mean you can't make it better for your people that you lead. That doesn't mean you can't make it better for yourself. Right. And a lot of people, they go through that and they're the ones responsible at the end of the day for their decisions. And if you're not willing to take those risks, you're not going to be able to get those rewards that may come with that. And entrepreneurship is a lot of experiments. You're going to try a lot of things. You're going to test things. You're going to, things won't work out, but sometimes things will, and they will take you very, very far.
Right.
I never thought speaking would be a thing back in when I just got started with Neechie Gear. I never thought I'd become a speaker, but it led to that. It opened you doors. And sometimes the path that you take may open a door that you never expected that may be what you're really meant to do.
Right.
And so you're not going to find that unless you really throw yourself out there. And that's where a lot of people get stage fright. Like myself, I had stage fright many times, and I just had no choice. I don't know how to explain that now. I just had no choice. I didn't have anyone to rely on. Like I had no rich parents. I had no rich community, nothing like that. And so I had no choice but to rely on myself. And it's still very much like that in terms of self-driven, I guess, self-driven by upbringing and very close immediate family member. That's my my circle, I guess.
Right. Kind of the foundation. Yeah. What would you say to somebody who, they've decided they're going to take that leap. They're going to kind of go for what they're really wanting, work with what they have, try to be resourceful. But what they're really struggling with is getting to that point mentally. Like they don't quite have the mindset tools to kind of like self-coach themselves.
Yeah.
And they're really struggling in that way. What would you say to somebody like that?
So we become a reflection of what's been put in our mind. Okay. And And if we want to change our outer world and how we look at the world and how we set goals and how we approach the day, even, we have to change the input up here to something that would rewire us in a different way. And what I mean by that, Natalie, is one of the things that really did that for me in 2014, I discovered audio programs, and I started to listen to audio programs. So watch on YouTube and listen in the background. And then I listened to, I bought audio CDs. They were just phasing out at that time, and then I got an Audible, audiobooks.com. The two things, I started downloading programs from there. And then I started reading, and then I started taking online courses. And then I started going to in-person seminars, online seminars. And then, and then I started getting coaching. I started getting mentorship. But, eventually when I had the budget, I would go reach out to coaches, and I would hire them for, even if it was just one meeting or 6 different sessions and so on. That's the degree of input I put into up for me. Now, most people don't do that because they're not willing to take those steps, but it's so simple, Natalie. Honestly, at the end of the day, if we were to simplify steps, a lot of it starts up here, and a lot of us haven't been given that foundation growing up to really help us up here. So we have to be responsible for changing that as individuals. When we hit a certain point in our life, when you become an adult, you are now in control for your decisions. And sometimes there's going to be things that weren't taught to you that you're going to have to go learn from other people, that you're going to have to learn from other gurus or whatever that might be. And that was a lot for me. That happened a lot to me. I had to go and learn that stuff, how to speak, how to, like I'm no fashion designer, Natalie, but I had to go learn stuff, right? I had to go learn how to sell. I had to go learn how to market. I had to learn how to do everything, write a book, speak. Like I said, everything in my business, I had to go and learn how to create an online course, like all these things. If you want it bad enough, you'll go and find a way to learn it. That's the best way I can sum it up, Natalie. And a lot of people, they make excuses because of their circumstances. And, that's not going to get you to take that first step. So find a way to take the first step. What's going to initiate that first step for you? Yes, we can change how we've been raised, but we can change the outcome of our decisions today. And that's the most important thing. Right.
And I think right now we're lucky in a way because, like you said, we have access to these, audiobooks, books, speakers that we can watch on YouTube that we might not otherwise have immediately in our circle. Yeah. So I think that's a really, really important point and important resource to kind of take advantage of too. One
of the things I'm going to be working on here is I'm going to probably host a couple free webinars that are just recorded on my site. And I'll leave them there just to teach people the basics of, because I get a lot of questions of basic entrepreneurship. So I'll probably start working on those very soon and just put them on there for people to go through that training, even if it's just for half hour, 45 minutes, just to get the basics, from how to create a product or service or both, that they can sell. And a lot of people, they are in that position to do that, but they just don't know. Sometimes they just got to hear it from someone like their own. That's what I found. And so I take it very seriously, the things that I share with people, and I try to help as many, especially of First Nations people as I can, because there's a rise happening of Indigenous entrepreneurship right now in this country. And it's very powerful. I see it everywhere. And I did not see that, 11 years ago when I just got started. And so this is very, very awesome time we're living in, Natalie, and I hope that it continues to blossom.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Another thing that I was wanting to ask you was, because I think you did such a good job of this in building Neechie Gear, was building kind of a community around the brand.
Yeah.
And I think part of that, from what I've seen, was the element of giving back that you had, that was really ingrained in the brand. So I was wondering if you could speak to that, and maybe some tips that you would give somebody to kind of create that community.
Yep, absolutely. So one of the things that I share with brand owners, and I do it in one of my trainings that's called the world-class brand. And the first thing in creating a world-class brand is you need to have a world-class or $1 million story that you tell to your audience. And the reason I tell people this is because that was the thing that took us from part-time to full-time. It was the story element and how it blended everything together in our social mission, how we sold a product, and how we communicated that to the person and why they should come to us. So everything just flowed when we brought that story. And I didn't tell the story for about 8 months into it. That's how long it took me. And then about the 8th month mark, I started to talk about it on Facebook. I started to share about it on Facebook. And then I made a story. I put it on the website. And then eventually, a few years later, we got a video team to do an actual video on, and you could see it on our website, NeechieGear.com, about the video. That's the video that they made. And when all those things started to come, everything increased. Sales increased, brand loyalty increased. People came back again and again. People would tell their friends. We didn't have to do a lot of Facebook advertising. We didn't have to do really any type of advertising. People would market for us. And that was like the sweet spot that a lot of people don't hit. They have to put so much money into ads, and then they settle for a little margin because they haven't developed a clear story that I would sum up at the end of the day as this, Natalie: a story so good that someone has to tell their friends. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like you go to a movie. It's a movie so good you have to tell your friends, or a Netflix series so good you have to go and tell your friends. How can you create a story like that? Right. And so the formula that I tell people is you find a turning point event in your life that's applicable to your business. So so in a sense, it's like your why story. Why do you do what you do? You want to communicate that to your audience. And for me, the why was the grade 5 story. That was the grade 5 was my best friend helped me to take part in soccer. Him and his family paid for my fees, drove me to games and practices. They empowered me through sport. That compounded into many things. 2 years later, they gave us a 1986 Ford Crown Victoria before they moved to Saskatchewan. Now they empowered my whole family with that vehicle. My mom's driving me to games and practices. I'm playing more sports. I go to North Battleford to go finish high school. I'm playing volleyball, badminton, soccer, and all these different sports. Compounded into going to college to play sports in college. And then I came back to University of Saskatchewan to become a teacher, and compounded from there. That's how that in university, my last year is when I started Neechie Gear as a full-time student. And I entered business competitions, didn't know what I was doing, but I'd show up and I would learn things at their workshops. I would learn from other people, and being the only brown face in the crowd, and also the only education student in there, like that was double intimidating for me. So I had to go and learn things, and I was always an underdog in everything that I did. And so I had to just throw myself out there a bunch of times. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's scary. Of course, it's uncertain, but these are opportunities we have to start taking, and that's just things we have to kind of just go with. And it doesn't get easier. You just you get stronger. The more you do things that are uncomfortable, you just build yourself over time. And so that story, I tell the story of how Johan and the family compounded the whole experience for myself. When I came to start Neechie Gear, I wanted to do the same thing through a clothing brand. So it all came full circle. And so when I tell the story, the audience can envision that story happening through pictures visually. And so that's the kind of stories you want to tell. You want to tell something that ignites, empowers, uplifts people, that takes you from where you are to where you're trying to go. And you find that turning point of event in your life, your career, your business. You write it down, you craft it, you get someone to help you with the writing on that, and you can publish it on your website and make a video if you can. Right. That's pretty much the formula. It's very basic. It's very easy. And most people, all of my clients do that. And so when they do that, they're able to get just organic businesses from posting something like that. People believe in that stuff. People believe in real stuff, right? And we're living in a world where people just want more real. I think COVID really exposed a lot of fake stuff, and people are starting to build platforms or just being themselves. And to me, that is like, holy man, that's what we need right now.
Yeah.
We don't need, things that are just edited like crazy. We need real stuff now. And, so yeah, that's what I would say. That's how you create $1 million story. You find it in your why. If you don't have that story you want to tell, there's 2 other ways you can do that. You can do it through a case study story, where you tell a client story of how they benefited from your product and service and how you changed their life, how you transformed them through some way. Or if you're like a big retailer brand or online brand, you get an endorser to do that for you. Those are the other 2 ways. But the most powerful is the founder story. Mm-hmm. You as a business owner, how you communicate that. If you can do all 3 over your time, boom.
Yeah.
That's a powerhouse right there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I think it kind of just speaks to how important it is to connect, to be able to connect with the people that you're trying to sell to on like a human to human basis. So something else that you kind of touched on with the videos that you mentioned you were going to have on your website was the importance of seeing somebody like you doing what you want to do. And I think in your book, you had mentioned that you had to kind of step into spaces that you didn't see any sort of like Indigenous representation in.
Yep.
And so I think that that's something that's really difficult, because if you don't have any, role models, it can be hard to kind of see yourself in that role. And so I was wondering if you have any advice as to how somebody can approach that, or maybe get past that.
Yeah. Even to this day, man, there's so many stories of that, Natalie, where I've been in a room and it's been so uncomfortable for me, but I've had no choice but to hack it out. Trying to make excuses to leave, trying to make excuses not to be there because I just didn't feel comfortable. So many things are not, how can I say it? They're not inclusive to people from Indigenous communities. And I had to go through a lot of that in the, especially business world, where just trying to make it and trying to learn, but also never taken seriously from peers. That was probably the most challenging. And I've had to learn a lot of things in the evenings, study, watch YouTube, go on Google. And that's where a lot of my learning came from, and reading books, eventually listening to audios, and that all transpired from that. But if I were to sum it up at the end of the day, that all helps, but on the ground, trying is what's going to teach you probably 90% of what you need to know. Trying to make a sale. There's such a process that you learn about yourself and how you communicate. People buy people. They buying from you. They're not going to buy your product. People, when Neechie Gear came, it wasn't Neechie Gear, it was Kendal. It was the story. It was how I told the story and how I initiated the sale from that story. And when I started to realize, I was like, holy crap, I got to really, I got to up my personal brand too, right? I have to start branding myself. And that didn't happen until 2015, when I started to build my own site, my own Facebook stuff, my own Instagram. I basically separated myself from my brand so people can see who I was behind the scenes and what all the things that I do and whatnot. And even it wasn't much behind the scenes, but at least it was a start. And a lot of people don't do that. And so branding is very much a part of you as an individual, as it is to whatever you're trying to sell, whether it's in fashion, whether it's e-commerce, whatever it might be. They're going to come to both. And they may come to your personal because they like you as an individual and they want to see more of what you're about. And maybe in time, you'll have more products, more services that you can offer to those people that come by your website. And so everything starts somewhere. But so whoever's watching this or who's going to watch the recording, find that one product, find that one service, and give it all your attention. That's the best way I can put that. Give it everything that you can in terms of energy, because where your energy, your attention goes, that's where everything's going to flow to. A lot of people, they'll put one foot here, and they realize later on that nothing's working. They're getting a little successful, but they don't become fully successful in what they feel they can achieve. You have to put both feet in. And there's a book called Jump by Steve Harvey that I think everyone should read. And that he explains in that book that everyone's going to come to a point in their life when they're going to have to jump in with 2 feet. You're going to have to jump into your dream. You're going to have to jump into your business. You're going to have to jump into a career, whatever that might be for yourself. You're going to have to jump. And that jump is very uncomfortable. And a lot of people don't ever make that jump, unfortunately, Natalie, because they're too comfortable and they don't want to take that step and they settle. And I'm scared of that. I'm scared of that I thought of that. And I want to do things that I feel I can do. And I just, I'm always trying to grow. I'm still learning. And at this time in my career, I'm just trying to help people grow their own brands, become better leaders. I'm doing a lot of coaching. That's where things are for me right now. And I'm just trying to grow that at this time.
Right. Yes. So much of, I guess, going after a business goal is about kind of wanting that dream more than you're actually scared of it. And trying to launch yourself into the unknown in that way. The next question I wanted to ask you was, are there any like standout mistakes that you made in any of your businesses that were really like learning lessons?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Probably the first one was the one I tell the most is when I just got started, one of my first business competitions was through the University of Saskatchewan, and we had won 10 grand from that competition. And I used about a good chunk of that prize money to buy screen printing equipment. And I had to learn how to screen print and do all that. Anyways, long story short, Natalie, it was a complete waste of time in terms of, so this is the mindset I had. And a lot of people have this. Got to keep my costs down. Got to keep my costs down. Got to keep my costs down. What are they forgetting? How to sell the thing. That's where all growth is. And so my mind was full focused on margins. Got to keep my costs down. Okay, I got to learn how to screen print. I'll keep my costs down by screen printing. Now I'm giving all my time to screen printing. I'm forgetting to sell, and that took me like 2.5, 3 weeks to figure that out. So I'm playing art class in my 1-bedroom apartment, trying to figure this out. And I eventually sold that to, I started working with Hard Press downtown Saskatchewan. Yeah. So Steve became like our designer, screen printer. And this was before he started really selling his brand. And so he was full-time in the screen printing. And so we developed a really good partnership, and he became our go-to supplier, and we grew together. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, such a good learning, learning point. I think a lot of people have that mindset of you have to kind of do everything yourself, figure everything out yourself. And a lot of the time that can be a really big time suck. And like you said, kind of take you away from what you should actually be focusing on.
Yes.
Yeah. So another question that I wanted to ask you was, have you ever had any major failures in your business? I know there was that as a mistake, but has there been anything that you would kind of classify as a failure? And in general, how do you approach failure?
There's been a ton of failures. Test marketing different stores, I failed a few times, trying things out. But I don't regret any of them. I don't regret going and setting up. I remember even in the early days where I was lucky to sell one hoodie that whole day at an event. That was like really humbling. Some days I didn't sell a thing, and I'd be like, holy crap, what am I doing with my life? All the negative things would just come and dominate my thinking. And that, I don't know. It was like most people probably wouldn't even hang out, if they weren't selling, probably get discouraged. And I was discouraged, but I kept showing up. That's probably the best way. I just kept showing up, kept trying, changing things, trying to adapt, evolve everything. And so there's so many things along the journey that different products I'd bring out where they would just be total bust, and I'd have to like discount it heavily just to break even. Sometimes I'd lose money on the order. Designers sending me really bad designs that I've had to find a way to repurpose, stuff like that. And it's just, campaigns that just didn't turn out. I invest in different things that just didn't turn out for us, became a waste of money. Shoplifting became a big thing where we'd have to really monitor that in our stores. And people are really good, people are really, really artistic in how they plan stuff out. And they would come in like groups, it was just crazy how organized they were. And so some of them are really organized, some of them weren't. And so it just, daddling stuff like that behind the scenes, trying to be a boss, trying to have staff. And then the hardest was staffing, I would say, is having a lot of staff and trying to manage them, trying to keep them motivated, trying to keep them showing up without calling in sick, like stuff like that. Because anything that went wrong, I'd have to go and pick up the pace there. I have to go drive to Prince Albert, Regina, it's just all over the place. So probably the biggest, I would say, failure became the blessing in terms of I fell out of I felt my passion diminished for retail 2 years ago. Is it 2 years ago? Yeah, two years ago. And so actually it was more like 3-4 years ago. And then 2 years ago, I made a decision that I was going to get out of retail, as in me having my own shops and managing it. It just became too much of a headache. And I wanted to speak more. I wanted to coach more. I wanted to do more things that I wanted to do. So I said, I'm going to restructure my business to be e-commerce still, be able to run itself. And I'm going to speak more. I'm going to coach more. I'm going to create this online academy. And then I made that decision. And March 2019 is when I got out of it. And so it came at the right time, because a year later, COVID came, right? And then we had every retail store suffering. And if I had my store right now, I'd probably be freaking out. I wouldn't know what to do. So it was a blessing in disguise. And there were so many things I wanted to do with Neechie Gear in terms of retail that I think I could have really crushed, but I just fell out of alignment with where I wanted to go with that. And it just became very discouraging over time to make that happen, because there were so many other things that I wanted to do. And it just became my own roadblock. It became a roadblock in my own other journey I wanted to do. So I had to, when you want to do something, if you want to do something great, you have to give up some things. And that was a part I had to give up. And I don't know if I classify as a failure, Natalie, but I anytime you build something and you have to give it up, it affects you. Right. And so that, it still affects me a little bit, but it's, like I said, it's something that I really felt I could have, done something really big with. I talk about it in the book where, I was planning to open up a store in Winnipeg, Edmonton, pretty much dominate the prairies in Western Canada. And, we could have done millions, in annual revenue. Like, just the projections were speaking for itself. Now, what does that mean? That means I would have been glued to the road. I would have been not home at all. I probably would have been drinking coffee, eating McDonald's every day. It wouldn't have been a good life, so it wasn't worth it to me. And that outweighed the chances of financial success with that business and the things that could have happened. So now I switched it all online, and I'm trying to find a way to keep that flow going, but also it's become a product of what I do now. It's a product of what I do as a speaker, as a trainer, as a coach. And So it's funny how things have flipped around. So before it was Neechie Gear carrying me. Now it's like I carry Neechie Gear with me with everything I do.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So you found that with weighing the pros and cons, it was time to kind of focus on in a new direction, really.
Yes. Yeah. And there were so many signs that came along the way. And I'm a big believer in signs and messages and whatnot. And I was already thinking of that back in 2016. So the first year we moved our location from the mall to Circle Drive, I was already like half of that reason was so I can focus more on speaking.
Right.
It was quieter. It was a quieter area. It had a bigger office space. It had a back room. We never had that stuff before. So when we got that, I was like, okay, awesome. I can still sell my stuff, but I can also still work on becoming a speaker. I can do my academy stuff. I can do the stuff I always wanted to do. And then there's so many things that happen. Like there's so much stuff I could talk about that happened where sometimes life will like create a series of events that will really show you like, okay, it's time to move on, time to go on to the next step.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me. Honestly, I don't know how to explain that. Mm-hmm. It was like so many different series of events said, okay, it's time for you to take the next step. You're needed over here now, which I feel is coaching. And so coaching, speaking, trying to help people one to many as best as I can, because I feel I've built a platform and now it's time to start helping people with that, which is comes back to my values again and how I was raised. Wouldn't be doing that if I wasn't raised like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope that all sums that up.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a really kind of exciting new project, new chapter you have going on. I want to be mindful of our time. Mm-hmm. So as a final question, how can people get in touch with you? How can they get in contact or can they connect?
You can reach out to me. Well, I'm on everything pretty much except for Snapchat and TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm very heavily on LinkedIn and Facebook, I'd say right now. Find me on those three. My website is KendalNetmaker.com. Check me out there. I'll be uploading some of those trainings that I was telling Natalie about in terms of the business development and also leadership development. So working on those right now. I'm doing a lot of mentoring, doing a ton of coaching. If you're looking for help with that, reach out to me anytime on my website and we'll reach back out to you and try to help you with that. So I just want to say thank you, Natalie, for inviting me to your podcast and to the show. And I hope that anyone who's watching this, that it inspires you in some way, that it helps you to move forward in a healthy way. But more importantly, that it just shows you that, anyone can do anything they really commit to. It's an obsessive feeling. Everything that I've done has been tied to an obsessive pull. And I followed the obsessive pull. I put my energy into the pull, from retail to speaking, to coaching, to writing a book. You have to fully immerse yourself in that moment with that thing you're working on.
Right.
So when you do that, good things come from that. You learn things about yourself. You learn things about other people. But it won't happen if you're one foot's in it and another foot's in a different project, a different career, and so on. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
So I hope that all helped you today, and I hope that helps your podcast as well, Natalie.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast and for spending time this morning. This was really, really great. So thank you.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Fashion Ambition podcast. If you liked this episode, make sure to leave a review. And if you got any great takeaways, I would love to hear your feedback. If you want to connect with me, you can find me on Instagram at nomadandmode and follow the podcast page at The Fashion Ambition to be updated whenever there's a new episode. I know that I always learn so much from each of the guests on the podcast, and I would love to know what stood out most to you. So feel free to tag me on Instagram with a screenshot of this episode and let me know what you learned. Thanks again, and see you in the next episode of The Fashion Ambition.